New Delhi's Connaught Place is a collision of commerce and motion. While its colonial architecture points to the past, today it operates as a high-speed environment defined by modern friction, where glass and steel meet the constant rush of city life. Yet just a few minutes' walk from that modern chaos, the ground opens up. You are looking at Agrasen Ki Baoli, a massive, rectangular stepwell from the 14th century that plunges deep into the earth. Architects call a site like this an urban palimpsest. It is a physical space where multiple layers of history are stacked directly on top of each other, with the modern city constantly building over and overriding the medieval infrastructure beneath it. Unlike the circular stepwells you might find elsewhere in India, this one is strictly rectangular. That linearity forces a specific physical perspective. As you walk down, the horizon line of the city vanishes, and the modern world is physically blocked from your view. When the modern city disappears from view, the site loses its context as a functional piece of urban infrastructure. Without that connection to the world above, the empty stone levels feel like a blank slate, making it easy for visitors to project myths onto what was once a purely practical piece of engineering. Thanks to appearances in hit Bollywood films like PK, the stepwell has transformed into a massive viral sensation. You have a choice when you visit. You can passively consume the Baoli as a crowded tourist trap, or you can actively read it as a masterclass in ancient engineering. The engineering experience starts the moment you begin walking down the 108 symmetrical steps. With every level you descend, the stone walls narrow, physically compressing the environment around you. This diagram shows thermal mass at work. Thick stone walls absorb the Delhi sun, trapping a static, cool blue zone below. This measured 3-degree drop created a summer retreat. Additionally, thick walls block city traffic, while narrow lower walls trap and amplify internal sound waves. Visitors often describe the heavy, pressurized silence at the bottom as haunted. But that feeling isn't supernatural. It is the direct result of 14th century thermal and acoustic engineering. Beyond controlling temperature and sound, the Baoli had to survive a much more violent threat. Northern India sits in a highly active seismic zone, yet this structure has endured centuries of major earthquakes. The secret is the joinery. Builders avoided rigid cement entirely. They used mortarless, interlocking dry masonry, mortise and tenon joints, where a carved peg locks into a slot. Because these joints rely on friction rather than a rigid binder, they give the structure a slight flexibility. When an earthquake hits, the stones can shift and absorb micro-movements, safely dissipating the lateral stress instead of cracking. However, the engineering that protected it from nature is now failing against urban development. The deep foundations of surrounding modern high-rises are exerting massive, continuous lateral pressure on the stepwell, threatening to destabilize the historic masonry. The 14th century architects successfully engineered a solution to outlast natural tectonic shifts. They simply couldn't account for the crushing weight of modern urban encroachment. That urban encroachment has also spawned some wild local legends. You will often hear stories about a pool of hypnotic black water at the well's bottom that supposedly lures people to jump in. The ecological reality is far less romantic. The historical aquifer that once fed this well is entirely dead. For most of the year, the basin sits completely dry, or it holds a few stagnant, silty puddles. Occasionally, the water level does mysteriously rise, but that isn't the ancient spring coming back to life. It is actually toxic sewage leaking into the site from failures in the modern city's drainage systems. When supernatural thrills dominate the conversation, they replace any discussion of the well's technical failure. It becomes easier to speculate about ghosts than to acknowledge that a medieval monument is currently serving as a collection point for modern sewage. If you decide to visit today, you need to set your expectations. The site has intense physical friction. You will navigate dense crowds, dodge performative photo shoots on the steps, and you will definitely notice the strong smell of bat guano in the lower levels. Despite those challenges, its location makes it an incredibly easy detour. It sits right next to major commercial zones and bustling markets of central Delhi. Overcoming the modern noise to actually appreciate the architecture requires a specific strategy. You have to plan your visit based entirely on what you want to get out of it. Preparation and deliberate timing are your only tools here. Use them right, and you can bypass the tourist trap to access the site's true historical value. If you are a visual creator looking for that perfect shot, you need to arrive right at 7 a.m. That is your only window to capture the optimal light and shadow interplay within the symmetrical arch niches before the crowds pour in. If you are an architectural optimizer, focus your time on the details. Inspect the dry masonry joints, measure the thermal drop, and study the ruined mosque's layout. This diagram maps out your optimal strategy based on your profile. If you fall into the time-strapped traveler category, treat this as a quick 30-minute excursion. Your trade-off is accepting the crowds and the ecological decay as simply part of Delhi's ongoing evolution. Agrasen Ki Baoli functions as an active mirror, reflecting how modern society consumes, ignores, and occasionally manages to preserve its deep architectural history.